I did. Okay. Technology. I'm not afraid of it, but I'm not always good at it, so we'll see how we do. I have one more announcement to give, and it's one that I give with a heavy heart. And that's, some of you probably already saw it on the prayer and share. But Keith Andy went to the Lord in the first hours of Saturday morning. And we want to remember the family. Marcia, Derek are here today. The memorial service will be announced at a future time. It'll be to be announced. And just in the meantime, will you lift them up in prayer? Will you lift up others maybe that you know that are going through a hard time where they've experienced a loss? And when something like this happens, it always affects all of us. We feel it. We know when somebody who is loved and who models loving God well moves on. And so we want to lift up the family. At this point, no meals are needed. There's no extra help specifically that has been asked for, but if that comes to the point where that's requested, we will definitely put that out for everyone to know. So we just join one more time in prayer. And I hope you don't think we overdo prayer, because, this is the whole thing, right? We're here to talk to God and with God because we believe he's not just somewhere up there in the darkness of the ceiling, but he's right here in my heart and in your heart and with us together. So will you pray with me one more time? Lord, you have welcomed your son this week. I knew him for 4 weeks. That's it. And my life was touched. And Lord, I pray for her family, for Marcia, for Derek, for Lance, for the in-laws, and for the grandkids. They're going to feel the whole of Keith not being there anymore. But there's also a great joy because they know where he is. And we thank you that your son is with you today. And Lord, I pray not just for Marcia and family, but Lord, there are others here. They are experiencing loss. They have experienced it. And their hearts ache. And maybe someone here today is even saying, oh, one more thing on top of another. But you see, and you're here, and you hold us, and you love us, and you comfort us as we comfort each other. And for that, we give you praise and glory. Direct us this day and lead us in your name. Amen. One of the things that George and I got to do is we were over with Marcia and Derek was get to hear a little bit of the stories. I think that's one thing I always enjoy is hearing someone's story. And memorial services, as sad as they are and as hard and heartbreaking as they sometimes are, they're also a great time to say, do you remember when? Did you know this about? And you get to share those things. So for my introduction today, I'm going to give you one of my little fun facts. I do wait till we're passed on before we start sharing these things. Let's share them now. It's part of being Body Life. And my fun fact is I love Christmas music. Now, this next statement is either going to make you groan or cheer. I usually start listening to it in July. I see my tribe, and I see those who are not my tribe. I'm behind this year. I haven't started listening to my Christmas playlist yet, so we'll have to, I know, I just feel that hole in my heart right now. How many of you know the song, Do You Hear What I Hear? Do you hear what I hear? There's one person out there who's right with me. All right. Yes. We'll connect. All right. And my subtitle of my message this morning is, Do You See What I See? Because often, I'll go ahead and give you the spoiler. This is the I am the resurrection and the life. And as Jesus presents this amazing, can we even grasp it today with all that we know of Jesus and all that we know of what he has done and who he is? Can we really grasp he is the resurrection? He is the life. And as we walk through the story where Jesus gives us this big, amazing declaration of who he is, they struggled to see. And so my subtitle would be, Do you see what I see? And just as the 4 stanzas of that fun little Christmas song speak to hearing and seeing and knowing and listening. That's part of what I want you to do today. Hear, see, know, and listen. So we're going to start today in John chapter 11. And I'm going to read for you from verses 17 to 27, and then I'll drop down and read 38 to 40. I'm reading out of the NIV, if you're trying to figure out which translation I'm reading out of. So if you have it in your Bible, go ahead and open to it, John 11, starting at verse 27. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. I know he will rise again at the resurrection of the last day. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord. I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. What an amazing declaration. Peter gets big accolades for his declaration of you are the Messiah. But here it is right here, Martha. You are the Messiah, the Son of God. Let's drop down to verse 38. Now the whole family is gathered, the disciples, Mary, Martha, all those who are with them, they've gone to the tomb. Jesus once more is deeply moved. So I read that as to say, he cried again. He's still shedding tears. He comes to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, by this time there's a bad odor. He's been there for 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you, if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Did I not tell you, if you believed, you would see the glory of God? As we walk through, I am the resurrection and the life, I want us to walk through 3 questions. The first one is, how do you come? Even right now, today, how do you come? In fact, let me actually ask that. Anybody want to say out loud, how did you come today? Walking, the literalists, we came this way. How did you come? How did you come in your interior, in your mindset, in your heart? Expecting. Tired. Yeah. Thankful. We all come in different ways. And I guess if we're going to be completely honest, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of my message a little bit, but we will actually come in multiple ways. There'll be multiple things going on inside of us. The second question I'm going to ask is, what do we see? And maybe even it might be better to say, what do you seek? Because we are all looking for something. And the third question that we're going to address this morning is, what do you believe? And again, that last part that I read, Jesus saying, did I not tell you, if you believed, you will see the glory of God? And the question becomes, what do we believe? So that first question, how do we come? How do we come? And we can get stuck on the question sometimes of, well, who has to make the first movement in coming? And sometimes in relationships, that can get to be a little sticky point. Well, they haven't done this yet, so I don't have to do this yet. And there can be a question of how we come. And if you know the preset stage of the story that I just read, you know that Mary and Martha had sent word to Jesus and said, hey, come. And what did Jesus do? He stayed where he was. Jesus, I need you. But there is mutual movement in this story. They send for Jesus, and while Jesus delays, he does come. As soon as Martha hears that he's on his way, she goes out to meet him. Then Jesus asks for Mary. She comes, and there's this mutual movement. They come together. And even today, this morning, we are coming together. We are coming just as we are. And if you look at the story and you see Martha's responses, you realize she came with a lot of different motions and motives. She came accusing. First thing that she does, see if we can get to the next slide here. If you had been here. If you had been here. There's a little bit of accusation in her voice, but she comes quickly, because as soon as she hears that he's on his way, she's there. She's faithful. Lord, I believe that whatever you ask of God, he will do. But she also comes confused. Well, yeah, I know that this is, but, and then later on when he says, move this stone, wait. She misunderstands. Jesus is telling her this beautiful, I am the resurrection of the life, and she doesn't fully grasp it. But she also comes hopeful. And this is the truth of how we often come to God. Not just in one state of mind, but in multiple states of mind. We come both accusing God of, why haven't you moved in this, and yet hopeful, I believe you will do something. We come quickly and we drag our feet. How do we come? And this is a question that we get to ask ourselves each and every day. How am I coming to Christ? How am I approaching this day? How do I come? How do I come to the one who says he is the resurrection and the life? And we can so easily get stuck on our own lives and our own circumstances and say, but I'm struggling. Lord, I can't come until I get myself all fixed up. How many of you ever struggle with that one? Okay, Lord, I'm going to start doing better. I'm going to read my Bible more. I'm going to call that friend I haven't called in forever. And then maybe I've done enough to ask you to be with me. And we get it twisted. And Jesus just wants us to come. Just as Martha came way before Lazarus was ever healed, come to the one who is the resurrection and the life. How do we come? Jesus desires to make himself known to us, to be the answer to every question we have, to satisfy us in every part of our heart that is hurting, to be there with us, to be our resurrection, to be our life. The second question that I would ask you today is, what do you see? And when we come to Jesus, all of us come with some sort of expectation. And maybe it's because God's done something in the past. He's done something amazing. He's done a miracle. He's worked in our lives. And we can say yes and amen. And God, that's what I want you to do again. That's what I want you to do it again. We sing a song. There's even a song that came out in the past decade of do it again. Lord, I know you have worked a miracle. I know you will do it again. And sometimes our expectations are not maybe so much of what we expect God to do, but there's certainly things we expect won't happen. But we all come with some sort of expectation. How many of you read the C.S. Lewis Narnian Chronicles? I was introduced to that story when I was probably 10 years old by a theater group who did a live action, but without any props. So the people were the props, and they were, it's stuck in my head. And it was pretty amazing, but I've loved that story, and I've probably reread it, I don't know how many times anymore. My first set of books have completely fallen apart. I'm on to the second set. But in the second book, Lucy, the youngest of the four main characters, she's waiting for Aslan, who in C.S. Lewis's allegory is a representation of Christ. She's expecting Aslan to come back and to do something, to do what he did in the first book. Big, loud noise, roar, make everything go away. And it doesn't happen that way in the second book. And I think in this I think C.S. Lewis was actually absolutely brilliant in writing these books. Aslan and Lucy, when they finally get together, and it's taken some time, and it hasn't been quick, and there's been doubts, but when they get together, she asks him, Aslan, I thought you were going to come the way you did before. Oh, daughter, I don't ever do it the same way twice. And that has stuck with me from the time I was a kid reading that to today. And I remind myself sometimes, I look at God, and I'm like, okay, God, you did this, do it again. I want the same package. And if it's not something that he's done in my life, maybe I'm looking at someone else's life and going, oh, I like what God did in your life. I want that. I want that model, that brand, that color, that style. And Jesus is sometimes sitting there going, oh, daughter, I have something for you. Now, where does that come into our story of Mary and Martha and the miracle? Martha wanted a miracle. But the truth of Jesus' miracles, the ones that he performed in the 3 years of ministry that he had, is all of those miracles would fade. Lazarus is not still walking alive today. Lazarus died. The miracles that Jesus gave were for a moment, and they were for a purpose, so that the glory of God would be shown. We sang about it in the first song, King of Glory. King of Glory. We want Jesus to be glorified in our lives. And the question that we can ask ourselves today is, what do you see or what do you seek? Are we looking just for a miracle that fades? Now understand, I'm not saying don't ask for the miracle. Ask for the miracle. Jesus did the miracles. He still is doing miracles. But I remember that when Jesus fed 5,000 and he took a simple lunch and he fed an entire crowd and had more left over than he started with, that was an amazing miracle. But Jesus would say later, these people aren't coming to me because they want to see God's glory. They're coming to me because I fed them and they want more food. And when Jesus comes to us and he says, I am the resurrection and the life, he's not just saying, I am the one who will resurrect the dead. I'm not just the one that will help you with your life. Yes, he is that. But what he really wants to present to us today, what he presented to Mary, to Martha, to all those who were in attendance that day was, I am the resurrection. And when you look at me and when you see me, don't just see what I might do or what the miracle is for today. And praise God, his mercies are new every morning. His miracles are afresh. But he wants us to see him. We don't always understand. In the Gospel of John, he starts out his gospel, verses 3-5. He's talking about, in the beginning was the Word, and he says, through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not understood it. Some versions will also say, in the darkness has not overcome it. And both understandings are true. But what I like about where it says, in the darkness has not understood it is, let's be honest, as I said already, we don't always fully grasp. How can we? Our minds are finite. We don't fully understand when Jesus says, I am the resurrection. But don't let that keep you from reaching towards the resurrection. Don't let that keep you from reaching towards the life. It's not that he's so big that he's unattainable. It's just there's so much of him that he's going to keep revealing himself to us. And as the light shines in our darkness, and as we become the light in the darkness to others, there'll be more understanding. It will come. What do you see? And that leads us to the third question. What do you believe? In the Passion, the same verse in John 11 says, I am the resurrection and the life eternal. Anyone who clings to me in faith, even though he dies, will live forever. And that's our belief for Keith and for all those that we know and love that have already passed on. And for ourselves. Because someday, unless God returns in our lifetime, we will all walk the way of the grave. Anyone who lives by believing in me will never die. Do we believe this? Can we believe in life eternal over life temporal? Because it's so easy to look at our circumstances. And I believe that all of us have a measure of faith. In fact, I'm absolutely convinced of it, that God gives every person a measure of faith. And it's up to us to decide, are we going to grow it, fertilize it, nurture it, increase our faith, or are we going to stifle it, keep it small, keep it in the dark? What do we believe? John 20:31, the ending of the gospel, says, but these things are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Do you believe? And just like Martha, there's going to be come a time where Jesus is going to look at us and say, do this, move this stone, open up that dark spot. And I tend to be more of a Martha than a Mary, so I feel like I can understand more of where Martha was coming from. She expressed great faith. It's not that she had none, but when it came face to face with dead body, gross odor, you want me to do what? I am going to question you on this. Even if I have just declared that you are the Messiah, the Son of God. Because let's be honest, we have all questioned God. Sometimes in rebellion, sometimes in confusion, sometimes in desperation, sometimes with a desire to know, but we've all questioned God. But God, don't you know? Don't you know? Yeah, he knows. When it comes to the place of understanding what we believe, there's going to become a point where this is challenged, where we're going to have to come face to face with a stone that God is asking us to roll away. And it's not easy. It's not easy to have that thing exposed. We want God to just fix it without having to roll away the stone. Couldn't Jesus have just said, Lazarus, come forth, and the stone just all on its own would have moved? Or Lazarus would have been translated through the stone and been in front of him, and then they didn't have to see any of the mess that was back there? Isn't that what we often want? Just make it pretty, God. Roll away the stone. Not because I want you to live in the shame and the despair of what has been, because I'm going to do something and I want you to participate with me. I am the resurrection and the life. Will we believe? For me, it was April 16th, 2019. So almost 3.5 years ago. I've been saved since I was 4. There's another little fun fact. I gave a confession to Christ at a kids' camp. I can tell you where I was at. I can tell you what the measure of my faith was at that point in time. And it was simple. I wanted to go to heaven and not go to hell. I wanted the good place, not the bad place. But at 4, that's okay. That's what I understood. And I have no doubt that God honored that request of a 4-year-old. And as I got older, my commitment to Christ deepened. My faith grew. But my faith would also get challenged. And I remember the day where I thought my world had come crashing down around me. And I had been at church, and everything felt like it went wrong. And I went out to the car, and I just was in a state of absolute despair. And in myself, I really was absolutely convinced I am dying. And it wasn't that I felt suicidal. It wasn't that I had this desire to take my life. I felt like my life was already taken from me. And it was hard. I'm a pastor. I'm a pastor's wife. I'm not supposed to be here, am I? Haven't I been faithful to God all my life? Haven't I served him? Haven't I loved him? And there came a moment, I was probably out in that car for half an hour, crying, despairing, but there came a moment when I cried to God, God, I am broken. Well, for me, God spoke 6 little words. 6 little words that I have held on to, and I've even been tempted to have them tattooed on me, but I haven't done that yet. But the words were, little bird, you are not broken. That was God's words to me. I have no doubt that it was God. And being the person of faith and being the person of, I've been crying out to God and getting these words and hearing, you are not broken, my response was, you're wrong, God. I am broken. But again, that gentle phrase, little bird, you are not broken. And in that moment, I began to see myself as God saw me. Not broken, ruffled, blown about by the storms of life, feathers askew, but not broken. And I don't know what message God has for you today. When he comes and presents to you, I am the resurrection and the life, he will speak to you what you need to hear in that moment. Those are my 6 words. And maybe you've already had that experience where you could say, yes, I can tell you exactly what God spoke to me on a day when I needed him. But one of the big things about that day that I have never forgotten is that was the day where I can tell you I absolutely 100% surrendered. That after that moment of, oh no, God, you're wrong, I'm broken, and hearing again, no, you are not. I was in such a place of, I can't do anything. I have run out of ideas. I've run out of strength. Everything that I can produce in me was now gone. I needed the resurrection and the life. And that place of absolute surrender. I found the strength to continue. And that day was so special to me. There was like more to this story, and probably over the time that George and I are here, you're going to hear more and more of our story. But on that day, it was probably about a 6-hour process. I felt like I was the butterfly emerging from the cocoon. I felt like I could just feel that thing crack. I could feel myself coming out. It was beautiful. And what was wonderful is I knew it was real because about people in church would start saying, something happened to you. Something happened to you. I mean, I've known that who you are, and I know you love God, but something happened to you. That's my testimony. And I want to invite the worship team to come back up. We're going to go into a few more songs. But I want to ask you, it's on the notes if you picked up one of the note cards out there in the foyer. But there's some questions I'd like you to consider now and to consider in the week ahead. What's your greatest struggle right now? Is it in how you come? Is it in the area of coming to God with transparency and vulnerability? Because it's not easy. It's not easy to come to God in that place because we don't always want to look at what's there. We don't always want to see what's in the tomb. Is it in seeing? And seeing how God is present with us right now. And it's the beautiful thing of the Gospels. The Gospel writers aren't afraid to tell us that, hey, Jesus was there and he was present and he was doing great things and we missed it. We didn't see. We didn't see all the way. We didn't see clearly. And sometimes he had to correct us and sometimes he had to warn us. That helps us today to grow. Is our struggle in what we believe and in believing that the resurrection and the life is for you here today. And are you ready to surrender? For Martha, it was open the tomb. For me, it was believing, little bird, you are not broken. I don't know what the big question is or what the big challenge is for you that God is allowing to be present in front of you today. Because it is something, God allowed it. Jesus purposely waited the couple days, knowing Lazarus would not just be dead, but dead and buried for 4 days before he would show up. But why? He tells us in John 11. In fact, if you go through John 11 and you start highlighting how many times the words believe, believe, believe is there, you will find it numerous times in this chapter. God wants us to believe. Are you ready to surrender? The worship team is going to lead us in a couple more songs. And would you open up your heart to the one who is our resurrection and who is our life?
Like Pam said, we're going to close with a few songs of worship here, and I just want to remind everybody that the front of the stage here is always open as an altar to come forward, and if you just need kind of a come to Jesus moment, there's things you need to lay down in your life and resubmit and resurrender to Christ, I'll just encourage you to do so. You can do it in your own chair, but there's something about coming forward and taking that physical step of vulnerability to just really bring yourself into the presence of the Lord. And I just want to encourage you too that it is always a good moment to come to Christ. I think sometimes we can feel like we've come to Christ and we've asked for forgiveness and we've resurrendered so many times that he couldn't possibly take us again, and we couldn't possibly